cold, silent night. The streets were empty, and the city lights flickered in the distance. A phone rang, a single shrill tone breaking the stillness. Ali picked it up, expecting nothing more than a wrong number or a telemarketer. But what he heard froze him in place. A distorted voice, low and deliberate, whispered a name he hadn't heard in months. Zeeshan, his best friend, his brother in all but blood. And then the line went dead. Welcome to Chronicles Confidential, where reality often blurs with betrayal. Today's story is not about a stranger or a criminal hiding in plain sight. It's about friendship, a friendship that started with laughter, trust, and shared dreams, but ended with deception so deep it left scars that could never heal. Ali and Zeeshan had been inseparable since childhood. From their first day of school to late-night study sessions in college, they had walked every step of life together. People often said, where there is Ali, there is Zeeshan. But behind those smiles, behind the brotherhood everyone admired, a secret was brewing, a secret that would soon destroy everything. They shared everything, hopes, fears, even business dreams. When Ali got a job in a reputable tech firm, he didn't think twice before pulling Zeeshan in. They started a side project, built an app, and within months, they were handling real money. It was more than success. It was their future, or so Ali believed. But trust is a fragile thing. One message, one transfer, one unauthorized login changed it all. Ali noticed inconsistencies. Money missing. Clients pulling out. At first, he blamed the system, then fate. But deep down, a whisper began to grow louder. What if it was someone close? What if it was Zeeshan? And then came the night. The voice. The name. That was the moment Ali's world began to collapse. Because that voice didn't just mention Zeeshan. It described accounts, passwords, private conversations only the two of them had ever shared. Ali couldn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, but disbelief. The man he trusted more than family. Could he really be the one destroying him from his shadows? This isn't just a story of stolen money. It's a story of stolen trust, of a bond that turned poisonous. What drives a person to betray the one who would have taken a bullet for them? And what happens when the truth finally comes to light? Stay with us as we peel back the layers of deception, uncover the motives, and reveal the haunting aftermath of betrayal that didn't just end a friendship. It destroyed a life. It was exactly 12:37 a.m. when Ali's phone buzzed on the wooden nightstand beside his bed. The room was dark except for the soft glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. He was half asleep, his mind floating somewhere between a dream and reality. When the screen lit up, a known number. He stared at it for a moment, debating whether to answer. At that hour, any call felt like bad news. He let it ring once, twice, and then picked it up. Hello? There was silence. No background noise, no breathing, just silence. Ali sat up, suddenly alert. Hello? Who is this? Then a voice spoke. Low, calm, and distorted, like it was run through a filter. Not robotic, but deliberately unnatural. The voice didn't greet him. It didn't ask for anyone. It simply said 7 words that shattered everything Ali thought he knew. Your friend is selling you out. Zeeshan. Ali blinked. He looked at the screen again to see if it was a prank. The call was still active. What? Who is this? But the voice continued as if reading a script. Check your inbox. The documents are there. You trusted the wrong man. And just like that, the call ended. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a creeping sense of dread filling the silence that followed. Ali sat motionless, phone still in hand, the screen now black. For a moment, he considered dismissing it as a prank, a cruel joke someone was playing. But something in the voice, something cold and calculated, made it feel real. Too real. He jumped out of bed and grabbed his laptop. His heart thudded against his chest as he logged into his email. And there it was, a single email from an encrypted address. No subject line, just a folder link. He hesitated, but curiosity had already won. He clicked. Inside the folder were screenshots, chats between Zeeshan and a competitor, transaction records, audio files of private meetings Ali thought were confidential. Ali's head spun. It wasn't possible. It didn't make sense. Zeeshan had access to those files. Zeeshan was there during those meetings. Zeeshan had promised loyalty, brotherhood. Ali's hands trembled as he clicked on one of the audio files. The moment he heard Zeeshan's voice, calm, confident, and talking about a deal to sell their app source code, his breath caught in his throat. He couldn't listen to more. He paused it, staring into the screen as if it could provide answers. Everything changed in that moment. This wasn't just betrayal. This was strategic, deliberate sabotage. And the voice on the call, whoever it was, had only lifted the first layer of a much deeper conspiracy. Ali's world no longer felt stable. The room around him seemed to spin. This wasn't just a bad business deal. This was personal. His best friend wasn't just lying. He was orchestrating a quiet destruction of everything they had built together. And now there was no turning back. That one mysterious phone call had set something in motion, something that would unravel every lie, every false promise, and every illusion of loyalty. Ali had no idea who the caller was, or why they had decided to expose Zeeshan at that exact moment. But he knew one thing for certain. Nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Ali and Zeeshan. Their names were almost always said together, as if they were one entity. From the moment they met in the third grade, their bond was instant, natural, effortless, the kind of friendship people often call destiny. While other kids were busy drawing lines around groups and cliques, Ali and Zeeshan crossed them all. Where one was found, the other wasn't far behind. They shared their lunches, their secrets, their victories, and their losses. In school, they were known as a duo that couldn't be separated. Teachers joked that they must have been twins in a past life. Their chemistry was undeniable. Zeeshan was loud, confident, and charming. He could talk his way out of anything. Ali was quieter, more observant, thoughtful, the one who noticed the small details others ignored. Together, they balanced each other perfectly. When they entered college, their bond only grew stronger. Late-night study sessions, planning startup ideas, dreaming of a future where they build something big together. It was all real, all shared. They were more than friends. They were family in every way except blood. They trusted each other more than they trusted themselves. But here's the thing about childhood friendships. They're built on innocence, not always on truth. As we grow, so do our ambitions, our desires, and sometimes our darkness. And that's where it began to shift. It was subtle at first. Zeeshan began to make decisions without consulting Ali. "It's just faster this way," he would say. Ali, always trusting, let it go. But there were signs, small, almost invisible cracks in their foundation. Zeeshan would sometimes speak to certain people and quickly change the topic when Ali approached. There were business meetings where Ali wasn't invited, calls that were taken in the other room, financial numbers that didn't quite add up. But the loyalty Ali felt toward his friend stopped him from digging deeper. He chalked it up to stress, to growth, to the pressures of building a business. What Ali didn't know was that Zeeshan had begun writing a different future, one that did include both of them, a future where success didn't need to be shared, a future where trust was a tool, not a bond. Their shared past had become a mask, one that Zeeshan wore skillfully. He still smiled the same way, still told the same jokes, still called Ali brother. But behind the warmth was calculation, and behind the shared laughter was a plan in motion. Ali believed in loyalty. Zeeshan believed in leverage. And while one friend thought they were building an empire together, the other was quietly making plans to take it all alone. So were they truly best friends? Or was it always something else? Something darker, hidden beneath years of shared memories? That was a question Ali never thought he'd have to ask. Until the night he discovered the truth. Ali had always believed that smiles didn't lie. Zeeshan's laughter was loud, genuine, infectious, the kind of laugh that lit up a room and made everyone feel welcome. When Zeeshan put his hand on Ali's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I've got your back," Ali believed him without hesitation. Why wouldn't he? This was Zeeshan, his best friend, his brother, his partner in every dream he'd ever dared to dream. But even the brightest smiles can hide the darkest intentions. In the early days of their business, Zeeshan was enthusiastic, supportive, and always full of ideas. He motivated Ali, helped him push boundaries, and together they made decisions that rapidly accelerated their small project into something real, something valuable. Investors began to notice. Clients came in. Money started to flow. And with every new milestone, Ali's trust in Zeeshan only deepened. But beneath that surface, a different game was being played. Zeeshan had begun forming quiet connections. Meetings held late at night, emails sent from anonymous accounts, deals discussed behind closed doors. On the outside, he was still the perfect friend, cheerful, loyal, involved. But on the inside, he had started to see Ali not as a partner, but as an obstacle. He had access to everything. Passwords, financial records, source code, client lists, and he used that access like a thief with master key, slowly, silently siphoning what he needed. Every move was careful, calculated, never enough to raise suspicion, always just beneath the radar. There were moments Ali could have noticed, moments that now played in his mind like clues he ignored. The time Zeeshan brushed off a security breach by blaming a freelancer. The day a client backed out suddenly, citing confidential concerns. But Zeeshan laughed it off and said, "Their loss." The night Zeeshan suggested moving some funds temporarily to a separate account just to keep things organized. Ali had trusted him so completely that questioning anything felt like betrayal in itself. But Zeeshan knew that. He knew that Ali's loyalty was his greatest weapon, and he used it to build a wall around his true intentions, a wall so well constructed that even Ali, the thoughtful and observant one, couldn't see through it. What Zeeshan didn't know was that all walls eventually crack. And in the silence after that mysterious phone call, as Ali sat staring at the evidence piling up before him, those cracks became impossible to ignore. The betrayal wasn't just about stolen money or lost opportunities. It was about trust, something Ali had given without limits, and something Zeeshan had used like currency. It was all a game to him. The friendship, the loyalty, the brotherhood. It was a perfect disguise, a mask worn so convincingly that even Ali had to question whether any of it had ever been real. In the end, it wasn't just a business that Zeeshan was trying to steal. It was Ali's belief in people, and that made the betrayal deeper, sharper, and far more devastating than any financial loss ever could be. It began with a single conversation, a moment of trust, one of those quiet, late-night talks between friends that feel safe, sacred, meant to stay between two hearts forever. Ali had been carrying a secret, a deeply personal business vulnerability, something that could potentially expose him to risk if it ever got out. A loophole in their security structure. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was serious enough to need fixing before anyone could exploit it. Ali had discovered it during a routine system audit and hadn't told anyone, not even their team. Not until that night. They were sitting on the rooftop of Zeeshan's apartment building. The city lights stretched endlessly before them, and the hum of traffic below felt far away. Ali stared at the skyline for a long moment before turning to Zeeshan and saying, "There's something I haven't told anyone." Zeeshan's expression turned sincere, focused. "What is it?" Ali explained the vulnerability, his concerns, and the silent pressure he'd been carrying for weeks. Zeeshan listened carefully, nodding, not interrupting. When Ali finished, Zeeshan patted his shoulder and said, "Good thing you told me. We'll fix it together. You're not alone, brother." Ali felt lighter. He hadn't realized how much that secret had weighed on him. Sharing it with Zeeshan felt right. After all, if he couldn't trust him, who could he trust? But the next morning, everything changed. Ali walked into their shared office and was met with unusual stares. Whispers that stopped when he entered the room, eyes that lingered just a moment too long. At first, he ignored it, but then came the phone calls. One from a former investor, another from a journalist he vaguely knew. Both asked vague, oddly specific questions about their system's integrity. By midday, Ali had seen enough. Someone had leaked the exact information he had shared the night before. Not twisted, not exaggerated. Word for word. Details only Zeeshan had heard. It had spread fast, through chat groups, private business circles, and local tech forums. Some were already speculating about a possible breach. Others warned clients to back away. Ali's hands trembled as he stared at his phone, scrolling through message after message. He felt exposed, violated, but most of all, betrayed. Still, part of him didn't want to believe it. He confronted Zeeshan, heart-pounding, voice low. "Did you say anything to anyone?" Zeeshan didn't blink. "What? No. Of course not. Why would I?" But his eyes darted slightly, just for a second. His voice held a faint defensiveness that wasn't there the night before. And in that moment, Ollie felt something snap inside him. It wasn't just a betrayal of a secret. It was a betrayal of a bond. That secret had been a test of trust, a private burden shared in confidence. And Zeeshan had failed. Worse still, the leak wasn't accidental. The way the information had been phrased, the exact technical terms used, it wasn't gossip. It was strategy. Someone had shared that information deliberately, targeting their reputation. And the only one who had access to it was Zeeshan. That day marked a shift in everything. It wasn't the system vulnerability that hurt the most. It was the realization that the real vulnerability was trusting the wrong person. Change doesn't always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it creeps in slowly, so gradually that you don't even notice what's slipping away until it's already gone. That's exactly how Zeeshan's transformation unfolded in front of Ollie. Silent, subtle, and disguised as stress, busyness, or bad moods. At first, it was small things. Zeeshan started arriving late to meetings. Just 10 minutes. Then 20. At first, he'd laugh it off, blame traffic, a misalarm, a late-night coding session. Ollie never minded. They were both under pressure, building something from the ground up. A little lateness didn't seem like a red flag. It seemed human. Then came the white lies. Zeeshan would say he had a client call and disappear for hours. Or he'd claim to be working from home. But Ollie would find out he hadn't logged into the project dashboard all day. Once, a mutual friend mentioned seeing Zeeshan at a dinner with a competitor's executive, something Zeeshan never told Ollie about. When confronted, Zeeshan shrugged. It was nothing. Just bumped into him, had coffee, didn't think it was worth mentioning. Ollie felt a flicker of discomfort, but brushed it aside. He had known Zeeshan too long. He told himself he would never hide anything important from me. But the signs kept building. Zeeshan's tone changed. He became defensive during discussions, especially when Ollie questioned decisions or asked for clarity on finances. He started keeping his laptop screen angled away, closing tabs quickly when Ollie walked into the room. Conversations that once flowed with laughter and ideas became short, transactional, clipped. He began avoiding eye contact. In the past, Zeeshan had always looked Ollie straight in the eyes when they spoke, especially during serious conversations. Now he glanced sideways, stared at his phone, pretended to be distracted. It was as if he was afraid something in his eyes might give away what was hidden beneath the surface. There was one particular evening Ollie would never forget. They were reviewing quarterly projections at their office late at night. Ollie noticed a significant discrepancy in the numbers. Funds that had been moved from one account to another without any documentation. He pointed it out, half expecting a reasonable explanation. Zeeshan didn't even look up from his screen. "I'll check on it tomorrow." "Probably a clerical mistake," he muttered. No concern, no urgency, just a dismissive wave of the hand. That was the moment Ollie felt something shift inside him. A growing silence that had been sitting quietly in the background now felt loud. Heavy. Still, he didn't act. Because loyalty has a way of silencing doubt. Because sometimes it's easier to believe that your friend is going through a tough time than to believe that he might be lying to your face. Ollie rationalized it all. He's under pressure. We both are. Maybe he's dealing with something personal. Maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down he knew. He just didn't want to accept it. The very foundation of their friendship had been built on blind trust. And now that trust was blinding him to the truth. What Ollie didn't realize then was that by the time a friend starts avoiding your eyes, they've already made a choice. They've chosen secrecy over transparency and silence over honesty. And by the time you start noticing the lies, the betrayal has already begun. It was supposed to be a routine evening. Ollie had finished a long day of back-to-back client calls and was heading to a popular cafe in the heart of the city to meet a potential investor. The cafe was known for its quiet corners and dim lighting, perfect for private business conversations. He arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and settled into a seat near the large glass window that overlooked the parking lot. As he sipped his coffee, scrolling through presentation slides on his tablet, something caught his eye, a familiar figure. Zeeshan. Ali's first instinct was to wave. Maybe Zeeshan had a meeting of his own at the same place. Coincidences happened, but just as his hand began to lift, he noticed something that made his fingers freeze mid-air. Zeeshan wasn't alone. Walking beside him, slightly behind but clearly in sync, was Adil Cameron, the man Ali considered his biggest rival, a former associate turned competitor who had tried, more than once, to poach clients from their firm, a man who had years ago openly declared that he would crush Ali's business ambitions. There was no misunderstanding here, no ambiguity. That man was the enemy. Ali's heartbeat slowed, then accelerated, the kind of irregular rhythm that comes when instinct collides with disbelief. He leaned back, eyes narrowing, watching closely. Zeeshan and Adil walked past a glass window, unaware of Ali's presence, and took a corner booth just 3 tables away. Ali didn't move. He couldn't. His eyes were locked onto them, his mind racing to find an explanation. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe Zeeshan ran into him the way he claimed with others in the past. Maybe it was casual. But then he saw it. A laptop opened, documents shared, a handshake across the table. Not a casual one, but the kind sealed with a smile. A deal. And just like that, everything Ali had feared came crashing down on him in that one frozen moment. He watched as Zeeshan leaned in, speaking with a seriousness Ali hadn't seen in weeks. He watched as Adil nodded, pulled out a pen, and scribbled something on a piece of paper. They laughed. They raised their cups in what looked like a silent toast. And all the puzzle pieces Ali had been trying to ignore snapped into place. The lies, the defensiveness, the missing funds, the secret emails. It all made sense now. Zeeshan wasn't just betraying him in whispers. He was sitting across the table from their most dangerous competitor, making deals in the open, as if the years of friendship and sacrifice had meant nothing. Ali sat there, invisible, every breath heavier than the last. He didn't approach, didn't confront. He simply watched, because in that moment, he needed to see it for himself. He needed to let reality hit him unfiltered. No more assumptions, no more doubt. There was something final, almost poetic, in witnessing the betrayal with his own eyes, not hearing it from someone else, not imagining it through suspicion, but standing there in flesh and blood, watching the man he once called his brother share secrets with his enemy. That moment etched itself into Ali's memory like a scar. It wasn't the meeting that hurt the most. It was the ease on Zeeshan's face, the comfort, the familiarity, as if deception was second nature, as if friendship had never stood in the way. Ali would carry that image with him forever, not just as proof of betrayal, but as the moment his world was irreversibly changed. Betrayal is a wound that cuts deep, but when it's laced with financial devastation, it doesn't just scar the heart, it shatters a person's foundation. For Ali, discovering Zeeshan's emotional betrayal had already begun unraveling his sense of reality. But what came next was colder, crueler, and far more calculated. In the days following the cafe incident, Ali didn't confront Zeeshan immediately. He chose silence, but not passivity. He started digging, reviewing financial statements, access logs, transaction histories, server backups. For the first time, Ali allowed himself to question everything. And what he uncovered was worse than he had ever imagined. The numbers didn't lie. Over the span of 6 months, Zeeshan had been slowly bleeding their joint business dry. It wasn't bold theft, not a single large withdrawal that would have triggered alerts. It was methodical, precise, a pattern of small, regular transfers routed through shell accounts and disguised as vendor payments. At first glance, everything looked legitimate. But once Ali followed the digital trail, the illusion crumbled. He found invoices from fake companies, project expenses that never existed, consultation fees paid to people who had never been hired, and worst of all, proof that their intellectual property had been quietly sold to a third-party buyer. The same buyer Zeeshan had likely been meeting in secret, a Dill Cameron. Ali's throat tightened as he calculated the damage. Nearly 7 million rupees gone, wiped from their accounts under the cloak of friendship. It wasn't just the money. It was months of hard work, relationships with clients, investor trust, and a reputation they had painstakingly built. But what truly broke Ali wasn't the loss itself. It was the knowledge that he had handed the weapon to the enemy. He had trusted Zeeshan with passwords, with access, with everything. The betrayal wasn't a single act. It was a campaign. A long, silent campaign waged right under his nose, funded by loyalty and powered by deception. Ali remembered every moment he had defended Zeeshan to others. Every time someone had raised concern, and he had shut it down. He's my brother. He would never. And now those words echoed back to him with cruel irony. The emotional pain was unbearable, but the financial blow made it real. It wasn't just about a broken friendship anymore. It was about legal liability, about debts, about obligations to clients and employees who had nothing to do with this betrayal, but would feel the aftershocks. Ali sat in his office long after midnight, surrounded by spreadsheets, emails, and documents that painted a story of loss. His eyes were tired, his body heavy, but his mind raced with clarity. Every rupee lost had a timestamp. Every lie had a paper trail. Every moment of trust had been met with exploitation. Zeeshan hadn't just stabbed him in the back. He had emptied his pockets while doing it. The business was no longer on the edge of collapse. It was falling. And Ali, who had once dreamed of building an empire with his closest friend, now stood alone in the ruins, picking up the pieces of something that might never be whole again. Ali had reached a point where trust was no longer an option. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a confirmed truth backed by financial evidence, behavioral shifts, and a memory he couldn't erase. Zeeshan sitting across the table from their sworn rival. But even as anger and heartbreak surged within him, Ali knew one thing. Accusations without undeniable proof could be denied, twisted, and turned back against him. And Zeeshan was smart, clever enough to cover his tracks, charismatic enough to make others believe anything. So Ali decided not to confront. Not yet. Instead, he began planning. He knew the damage Zeeshan had caused financially, but he needed concrete, irrefutable evidence. Proof that couldn't be denied or explained away. Proof that showed Zeeshan's words, his intentions, and betrayal in his own voice. A confession would be ideal. But to get one, Ali had to think carefully. He had to bait the trap perfectly. First, he planted the seed. He approached Zeeshan casually the next day and told him he was considering a new partnership, one that could bring in a large investor from Dubai. The story was fake, of course, but was dressed in just enough detail to sound real. He mentioned that they'd need to clean up the finances before presenting the project, that they'd need to restructure some hidden expenses, maybe even move a few things around temporarily. Zeeshan's reaction was cautious at first, but Ali saw the flicker in his eyes, the interest, the calculation. A part of him had taken the bait. The next step was to set the stage. Ali invited Zeeshan to a private meeting in a rented co-working space, neutral territory. He installed hidden audio recorders and 2 small surveillance cameras, positioned discreetly in the corners of the room. Everything was wired to his laptop, which recorded in real time. This wasn't just precaution. This was war. When Zeeshan arrived, he was his usual self, friendly, relaxed, pretending as if nothing had changed. Ali mirrored his energy, even smiled, but inside, his pulse was pounding. They talked. Ali gently steered the conversation toward their finances, hinting at cleaning up irregularities before any potential investor due diligence. And then he said it. We'll just cover some of the missing funds under operational losses. You've already moved that money, right? There was a pause. Zeeshan's eyes narrowed slightly. You mean the vendor fees? Ali didn't respond. He just raised an eyebrow, letting the silence do the work. And that's when Zeeshan started to talk. It wasn't a full confession, not at first, but it was enough. He admitted to creating shell vendor accounts. He joked about borrowing from the business until the next deal came through. He laughed about how clients never really read contracts anyway. Ali said little. He kept the conversation going, careful not to raise suspicion. Every second was being recorded, every word stored. But it didn't stop there. Zeeshan, perhaps to flex his own cunning, began to speak more openly. He mentioned Adil Cameron by name, referred to a side agreement they'd discussed, even hinted at the code base they had quietly sold. By the end of the meeting, Ollie had everything he needed: voice, face, intent, motive, plan. It was all there. When Zeeshan left the room that evening, he walked out with a smile, thinking he was still in control, thinking he still had the upper hand. But Ollie stayed behind, staring at the recording on his laptop, knowing the balance of power had finally shifted. Now he had a choice. He could go to the police. He could take it to investors. He could confront Zeeshan in front of the entire team. Whatever path he chose next, one thing was certain. Zeeshan had walked straight into the trap, and this time there would be no escape. The question was no longer if Ollie could expose him. The question was how far he was willing to go. The night was unnervingly quiet. Ollie sat alone in his apartment. The city outside dim under the weight of a cloudy sky. It had been days since the secret meeting with Zeeshan, the night he had recorded everything. But Ollie wasn't at peace. He couldn't be, because despite all the evidence he had gathered, something inside him still hoped, still wished, that this was all a misunderstanding, that somehow, someway, Zeeshan would come clean on his own, would explain everything, would make it right. But that hope died at exactly 11:14 p.m. Ollie was organizing the recorded files, preparing to send them to his lawyer, when his phone lit up again. Unknown number. The same kind of call that had started this nightmare weeks ago. For a split second, he hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he answered. No greeting. No pleasantries. Just a voice, mechanically distorted again, just like before. Check your messages. I told you it was deeper than you thought. The call ended before Ollie could speak. His heart tightened as he opened his messaging app. There, waiting for him, was a single voice note sent through an encrypted number. No context. No name. Just one file titled, Listen Carefully. Ollie plugged in his headphones, hit play, and what he heard made his blood run cold. It was Zeeshan. There was no distortion, no filter, just his voice, clear, unmistakable. And this time, he wasn't joking or hiding behind half-truths. He was speaking to someone else. Adil Cameron. He doesn't know. He still thinks we're partners. I've mirrored the database. The source code's ready. Once we get the funds from Adil's investor, I'll trigger the update and collapse the old server. By the time Ollie figures it out, everything will be gone. Ollie froze. The voice continued. Look, I know it's risky, but he's too trusting. That's always been his weakness. He doesn't see it coming. Then Adil's voice came in, colder and more businesslike. Good. Make sure the trail stays clean. If this works, you walk away with your cut, and we take over the client list. No contact after this. Understood. Zeeshan replied. Understood. Ollie stopped the recording, his hands trembling. This wasn't just evidence. This was a confession, a full blueprint of the betrayal. Zeeshan hadn't just misused access. He had cloned their entire operation, copied proprietary data, and planned to erase the original infrastructure. This was sabotage of the highest order. Ollie's world tilted. Everything he'd feared, everything he'd suspected, was now confirmed in the clearest, most undeniable way. His friend, his brother, had been orchestrating his downfall for months, calmly, confidently, all while looking him in the eye and calling him partner. That night, Ollie didn't sleep. He replayed the audio over and over, each time the words hitting harder, cutting deeper. He walked through every memory, every moment of shared laughter, of promises made, of dreams built brick by brick, knowing now that Zeeshan had been chiseling away at the foundation the whole time. The betrayal was complete. The illusion was shattered. And the final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Ollie had the truth. But what he would do with it was a decision that would define everything that came next. Ollie sat alone in his study, the recording playing faintly in the background, looping the words that had shattered his world. The betrayal was no longer a theory. It was a confirmed reality, spoken in the traitor's own voice. And now, With every passing hour, one question burned hotter and brighter in his mind. What now? He had everything he needed. Documents, transactions, emails, messages, and now, the final piece, the voice recording. This wasn't just evidence. It was a legal weapon, enough to bring Zeeshan down, enough to make sure he paid for everything. But as Ollie stared at the pile of files on his desk and the blinking cursor on a drafted email to his lawyer, he couldn't hit send, because law could punish betrayal. But it couldn't heal pain. It couldn't restore the years he had invested in a man who turned out to be a ghost in disguise. It couldn't erase the humiliation, the anger, the sleepless nights spent trusting a friend who had been plotting his ruin. And in that silence, something darker began to rise. A voice inside him whispered, "Why go through the system? Why wait? Why give him a chance to manipulate, to delay, to escape with a slap on the wrist?" Ollie paced the room, his thoughts spiraling. He imagined confronting Zeeshan face to face. Not in a courtroom, but somewhere private. Somewhere without cameras, without judges, without laws. Just truth and consequence. He imagined exposing him in public, dragging his name to the same mud he had thrown Ollie into, making him feel the same isolation, the same betrayal, the same helplessness. He imagined revenge. Real, personal, raw. But revenge, too, has a price. Ollie knew that. Somewhere deep in the part of him that still believed in right and wrong, in consequences and accountability, he knew that if he crossed that line, if he chose vengeance, there would be no coming back. The world wouldn't see him as the victim. They'd see a man consumed by rage. They wouldn't see the betrayal. They'd only see the fire he set to get even. And worst of all, Zeeshan would win again. Because the man who betrays your trust doesn't just want to steal from you. He wants to make you lose yourself. He wants you to burn down your own identity in the process of hurting him. Ollie stood still. His heart waged war against itself. The part of him that wanted justice battled the part that craved revenge. He thought of his father, who had always said, "The strongest man isn't the one who hits back hardest, but the one who holds back when no one else would." He thought of the employees who depended on him, the clients who still believed in the business, the team that still looked to him for leadership. If he lost himself now, everything they had built, everything that still remained would crumble. And so, with trembling fingers, Ollie returned to his desk. He opened the email again, attached the final recording, and hit send, not because he was weak, but because he was strong enough not to burn, because justice isn't loud. It's quiet, relentless, and final. And in that moment, Ollie chose not just to defeat Zeeshan, but to rise above him. And that choice made all the difference. The court summons had been delivered. The evidence had been submitted. Zeeshan could no longer hide. The empire of lies he had built so carefully was now cracking under the weight of truth. Days of silence followed the legal notice. No calls, no texts, no denial. Just absence, until one morning Ali's phone rang. It was Zeeshan. The display name alone stirred a storm of emotions in Ollie. Rage, hurt, betrayal, and somewhere buried deep, a flicker of the old familiarity. Against every instinct he answered. Zeeshan's voice was subdued, slower, like someone who had rehearsed every word, but still didn't know how to speak. "Ollie, I want to meet. One last time." Ollie hesitated, but something inside him, maybe curiosity, maybe the desire to hear the truth from the man himself, made him agree. They met at the same rooftop, where Ollie had once confided the secret that began it all. The air was heavier this time. No laughter, no easy brotherhood, just silence thick with memory and consequence. Zeeshan looked different, not physically but in posture, shoulders hunched, eyes sunken. Not the confident trader Ollie had envisioned, but a man worn down by the unraveling of his own mask. "I messed up," he said finally. "I lied. I betrayed you. I broke something I can't fix. And I'm sorry." The words hung in the air, fragile but heavy. Ollie didn't respond. He just watched, listened. Zeeshan continued, voice cracking with emotion. "I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just shortcuts. Then opportunities came, and I convinced myself it was harmless, that I'd fix it, pay it back. But the deeper I got, the harder it became to stop. Ali's heart beat slower. Each word Zeeshan spoke pulled at the part of him that still remembered the friend he had once loved like a brother. But something didn't sit right. Zeeshan's words were perfect, his timing flawless, the regret in his tone almost believable. Almost, until he said, "If we just settle this quietly, if you drop the case, maybe we can rebuild or at least walk away without more damage." That was it. The tell. The mask slipped for a fraction of a second. This wasn't confession. It was strategy. The meeting wasn't about remorse. It was about damage control. Zeeshan wasn't here to seek forgiveness. He was here to negotiate survival. Ali stared at him, suddenly cold again. "You're not sorry," he said quietly. "You're cornered." Zeeshan didn't deny it, didn't argue, just looked away. Because he knew. The truth was out. The recordings were real. The transactions were traceable. The betrayal was public. And now, the man who had once played every angle had finally run out of moves. Ali stood up slowly. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Zeeshan. It's a crime. And no apology can erase that." Zeeshan didn't follow him, didn't protest. He just sat there, still, as Ali walked away for the last time. It would be weeks before the court hearing, months before any verdict. But for Ali, the real closure came not from the law, but from that moment, from seeing the man behind betrayal, exposed and desperate, trying to wrap a lie in the skin of an apology, and knowing he would never fall for it again. The story didn't stay private for long. Once the court documents were filed, and once the leaked voice recordings somehow made their way into the public domain, no one knows exactly how, a storm ignited on social media that no one could contain. It began with a single tweet. What do you do when your best friend steals your business and sells it to your enemy? The tweet was anonymous, but the attached audio file was unmistakable. Zeeshan's voice, Adil's name, the betrayal, unfiltered. Within hours, it was everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Influencers picked it up. Business pages debated it. Podcasts dissected the ethics. Tech forums analyzed the code theft like a case study. Even casual users began posting reaction videos. "I can't believe this happened." That voice message gave me chills. Some people rallied behind Ali immediately. They saw in his silence and restraint a rare kind of strength. The man who had been stabbed in the back, but still chose to fight through proper channels. They admired how he didn't lash out online, didn't vent or accuse, but instead let the evidence speak for itself. Hashtags like #JusticeForAli and #FriendOrFraud began trending, but not everyone agreed. Zeeshan still had his defenders, people who remembered the charming, funny, charismatic entrepreneur who had once inspired thousands of young dreamers. Some believed the story was exaggerated. Others claimed Ali had released the audio for attention, to defame Zeeshan after a business fallout. Some even spun the narrative. What if Ali failed and is now playing the victim? The internet, after all, loves controversy more than truth. Memes were made. Edits went viral. One reel comparing the situation to a crime thriller movie got over 2 million views in a single day. And with every new post, the pressure mounted. Media outlets picked up the story. Interviews were requested. Offers came in for podcasts, articles, even documentary rights. But Ali stayed quiet. He watched as the world dissected his pain, twisted it, glorified it, turned it into content. He read every comment, every message, every opinion, and realized that in the digital world, truth wasn't enough. You needed a narrative. You needed sides. And sides were forming fast. Some people saw Zeeshan as a traitor, a manipulator who used charm to mask his greed. They posted old videos of him speaking about loyalty and growth, adding sarcastic captions. "Say it louder for the investors you betrayed." Others painted him as a victim of ambition, a man tempted by opportunity, not inherently evil, but trapped in the game of business. They quoted him, shared selected parts of the audio, argued that Ali was cold, calculating, using legal power to crush a friend. The digital battlefield blurred morality. Everyone had an opinion. No one had context. And Ali? He sat in silence, watching his personal tragedy become public spectacle, watching strangers turn his betrayal into hashtags and sound bites. But even in that noise, something changed. People were talking about trust, about partnerships, about the fine line between friendship and ambition. His story, though painful, was opening eyes, and in a way that gave him strength, because the truth was no longer hidden. It was out there, and no amount of spin, sympathy, or social noise could bury what had been revealed. Ali didn't need to win public opinion. He had already won something far more powerful: clarity, and the unshakable decision to never let loyalty blind him again. In the days that followed the social media explosion and the legal proceedings, Ali found himself surrounded by noise, but consumed by silence. There were interviews he didn't attend, messages he didn't reply to, praise he didn't feel, and justice that still felt painfully distant. Because behind the screens, behind the public outrage and viral hashtags, Ali was breaking. It wasn't just about money lost or a business betrayed. It was the trust. The kind that doesn't come from a handshake or a signature, but from years of shared laughter, sleepless nights, whispered secrets, and blind belief in someone you once called brother. Now, every moment of stillness was filled with replayed memories. His mind wouldn't stop. Conversations, once casual and forgettable, now echoed with hidden meaning. Every joke Zeeshan ever made. Every time he looked away. Every silence. Every "don't worry, I've got it covered." Ali lay awake most nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering how he had missed it all. He blamed himself more than he blamed Zeeshan. How could I be so blind? How did I let it go this far? Why didn't I listen to the signs? The sleeplessness turned into exhaustion. The exhaustion turned into detachment. Friends noticed his absence. Texts went unanswered. Meetings were canceled. Food lost its taste. Music lost its rhythm. Nothing felt real anymore. The very world he had built, with so much passion, so much love, now stood like an abandoned building in his mind, haunted by betrayal. The loneliness was the worst part, not because there weren't people around, but because no one really understood. They saw the headlines. They heard the audio, but they didn't feel the void that Ali felt every time he walked into the office and past Zeeshan's old desk. They didn't feel the ache of looking at old pictures on his phone, trips, birthdays, wins, and wondering if any of it had ever meant anything at all. Even sleep, when it came, was no escape. Dreams became battlegrounds. He would wake up sweating, heart pounding, sometimes thinking he was back at the cafe watching Zeeshan shake hands with Adil. Other times, he saw himself screaming, begging Zeeshan to tell the truth, only to be met with silence. Therapy was suggested. Friends offered to help. A few even tried to distract him with positivity. "At least you found out before it's too late," they said. But Ali knew better. It was too late, not for his career, not for the legal case, but for his soul. Because what Zeeshan stole wasn't just money or code. It was Ali's ability to believe that someone could be close and not have an agenda, to believe that loyalty still existed in its purest form, to believe that brotherhood could survive success. He had built walls now, around his thoughts, around his heart, around every new relationship that tried to form. Because how do you trust anyone again when the person who knew you best used that knowledge to destroy you? Ali still smiled sometimes, still worked, still moved forward. But inside, he carried a quiet grief, a permanent weight. The cost of betrayal wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. It was sleepless nights. It was silence in crowded rooms. It was loneliness in the presence of people. And perhaps most painfully, it was the death of innocence in a man who once believed that loyalty was unbreakable. For months, the world had focused on one narrative: Zeeshan's betrayal. The friend who stole. The partner who lied. The man who traded brotherhood for ambition. It was a story that gripped the public, fueled debates, and drew clear lines between right and wrong. But there was a part of the story that no one knew. Not the media. Not the investors. Not even Zeeshan. Because buried beneath Ali's silence, beneath his sleepless nights and heavy stares, was a truth he had never shared, a secret that had carried long before the betrayal ever began. Ali had seen it coming. Not in full, not with proof, but with instinct. It had started nearly a year before the fallout. A subtle moment. A quiet dinner with a former colleague who had left the company without explanation. During that dinner, the man had casually mentioned rumors that Zeeshan had been in contact with Adil Cameron, that he had asked questions about business models, client lists, and exit strategies. Ali had laughed it off at the time, or at least pretended to. But that night, when he got home, he couldn't sleep, and that's when he did something he never thought he would do. He started documenting. Silently, discreetly. He didn't accuse, didn't confront. He simply created a secure offline archive, a digital vault where he began storing things. Transaction receipts, duplicated reports, system access logs, emails that felt slightly out of place. He began building a backup of their source code, creating an encrypted version of every major asset the company owned, without telling Zeeshan. And then he did something even more drastic. He designed a kill switch. It wasn't something he ever intended to use. It was a last resort protocol buried deep in the company's infrastructure, hidden code written under aliases, fragmented across systems, invisible unless someone knew exactly where to look. A single command that, if triggered, would shut down the clone server, revoke access to core client accounts, and re-encrypt the data that made their company valuable. Ali called it Project Lazarus. It was his insurance, his contingency plan, not against Zeeshan, but against Betrayal itself. And when the moment finally came, when the voice recording revealed the truth, when the fake vendors were discovered, when Zeeshan shook hands with Adil, Ali didn't just react. He executed. Silently, he triggered Lazarus. The copy Zeeshan had created, corrupted. The database he had mirrored, locked. The version of the source code Adil had paid for, rendered unusable. In less than 36 hours, everything Zeeshan had stolen turned to dust in his hands. Neither he nor Adil ever knew how it happened. They blamed a server crash. They suspected sabotage. But they never suspected that Ali, quiet, loyal, broken Ali, had anticipated them. The world saw a man betrayed. What they didn't see was the strategist behind the scenes. Ali had played a long game, not out of vengeance, but out of survival. He had known, deep down, that not everyone who smiles beside you wants you to succeed. And so, while the world called him naive, while Zeeshan believed he was winning, Ali had been preparing for the day the mask would fall. He hadn't stopped the betrayal, but he had made sure it would fail. That was the part of the story no one ever knew. Not because Ali was hiding it, but because some victories are quiet. Some battles are won in silence. And some heroes don't roar. They just survive, with dignity intact and truth in their hands. When the final court date was announced, most people assumed the drama was nearing its end. The evidence was overwhelming. The betrayal was public. Zeeshan had lost support, lost credibility, and lost access to everything he had once stolen. But what no one expected, what no one even imagined, was that Ali wasn't done, not with revenge, but with justice. As the courtroom filled on the morning of the hearing, journalists, bloggers, and curious onlookers waited to witness the climax of a story that had captured headlines and dominated social feeds for weeks. Everyone expected confrontation, anger, outrage, maybe even a bitter speech from Ali as he faced a man who had destroyed so much. But Ali walked in calm, silent, composed. He took his seat with no drama, no entourage, no performance, just presence. When the judge gave him the floor, Ali stood and delivered a statement that no one in the room was prepared for. He acknowledged the betrayal, the emotional damage, the financial losses, the theft of trust. But then he paused and said something that stunned the courtroom into silence. I am not here to destroy Zeeshan. That part of him has already destroyed itself. I'm here to set a precedent. For every person who has ever trusted blindly, who has ever been betrayed not just by action, but by love. The judge nodded, expecting a request for maximum penalty. But Ali continued, I do not want him imprisoned. I want him accountable. He then submitted a proposal, an alternative resolution. Zeeshan would relinquish all remaining shares, withdraw from the industry for a fixed term, and publicly admit to the full extent of his misconduct. He would work pro bono for 2 years under a nonprofit Ali had quietly established, an organization designed to protect young entrepreneurs from business exploitation. This wasn't mercy. It was justice with purpose. It was punishment with reform. It was accountability in its purest form, visible, public, undeniable. People were stunned. Why not destroy him? Why not press every legal advantage? Because Ali understood something the world often forgets. Destruction doesn't heal. It only spreads pain. By choosing a different path, he didn't just win in court. He won in character. The media had expected a victor-drenched in vengeance. Instead, they saw a man shaped by pain but not owned by it. Zeeshan accepted the deal. He had no choice. And as he stood beside Ali, forced to confess, forced to serve the very cause he had once undermined, the world saw the full weight of silent justice. Ali walked out of the courtroom that day not as a victim, not even as a hero, but as a symbol of something rarer than revenge, grace in the aftermath of ruin. And that left everyone speechless. It happened without warning. Just weeks after court's final judgment, just days after Zeeshan had begun his mandatory service with a nonprofit Ali created, he disappeared. No note, no phone call, no trace. One morning, he simply didn't show up. At first, no one panicked. People assumed he was avoiding his responsibilities, trying to delay the public humiliation of facing young entrepreneurs who knew exactly what he had done. Ali didn't even react. He thought, let him run. He has nowhere to hide from his own name. But by the second day, things took a strange turn. Zeeshan's phone was turned off. His apartment door was locked from the outside. No luggage missing. No signs of packing. His car was still parked on the street below. His landlord hadn't seen him. Neighbors said they last noticed him on a late-night walk, alone, wearing a hoodie, his face barely visible under the streetlights. Then came the third day, and the silence grew heavy. A missing persons report was filed by his younger brother. Police questioned friends, colleagues, anyone who had been in contact with him. Rumors began circulating. Had he fled the country? Was he hiding from shame? Had he been harmed? Or worse, had he harmed himself? But no passport use, no border exit record, no flight, no train, no taxi, nothing. CCTV footage showed him entering a narrow alley the night before he vanished. But there was no footage of him coming out, just darkness, a black hole in the timeline. The news caught on quickly. Zeeshan Ali Khan missing. Ex-tech star disappears mysteriously. For the first time, the media stopped talking about betrayal and started talking about mystery. Ali was contacted for comment. He refused to say much. His only words to reporters were calm but chilling. I have no interest in chasing shadows. Privately, however, the news stirred something deeper. Because as much as Ali wanted to move forward, he couldn't ignore the lingering feeling that this wasn't just a vanishing. It was an escape, or a cover-up, or something else entirely. And slowly, the theories began. Some believed Zeeshan had faked his disappearance, changed his identity, and disappeared overseas. Others believed he was taken by someone he owed, someone involved in the dark corners of the deals he had once made. A few whispered darker things that he had never planned to serve justice, only to delay it long enough to vanish. And then there were those who believed something more ominous, that guilt had consumed him, that he had walked into the night with no plan of returning. Police searched abandoned buildings, checked nearby lakes, questioned known associates. Weeks turned into months. No body, no signal, no evidence, just absence. Ali, for his part, never asked them to search harder, never posted a plea, never lit a candle or held a vigil. He didn't need closure from Zeeshan. He already had it. But sometimes, alone at night, he wondered, was this the final move in Zeeshan's game? A calculated disappearance to reclaim control? Or was it the unraveling of a man who had finally been caught? Not by law, not by Ali, but by the unbearable weight of his own conscience? No one knows. And to this day, Zeeshan remains missing, not just from court or contracts or consequence, but from the story entirely, leaving behind only a question that still echoes in silence. Did he vanish to escape justice? Or was his disappearance justice itself? For most people, Zeeshan's disappearance marked the end of a scandal. The court case was closed. The punishment was assigned. The public had moved on. And with no body, no confession, and no leads, the police, after months of searching, officially shut the investigation, labeling it a voluntary disappearance, likely due to mental distress. But for those who had followed the story closely, something about that conclusion felt too neat, too convenient. And Ollie, though he had chosen silence, wasn't fully convinced either. Because buried within the chaos of betrayal, legal proceedings, and media attention were fragments of conversations, inconsistencies in timelines, and digital traces that didn't quite add up. It started with a name, one that appeared in Zeeshan's emails, always casually referenced, always vague. Naveed R. No last name, no company title, just a man who, based on context, seemed to be some kind of financial facilitator, someone who helped clean things up. Ollie had noticed a name months earlier, but at the time, it seemed like just another minor character in Zeeshan's web of lies. But after the disappearance, that name resurfaced in an unusual place, a flagged IP address traced to a financial transaction made just 4 days before Zeeshan vanished. The account that received the transfer was offshore, but the digital fingerprint led to a location within the same city, a location just 10 blocks from Adil Cameron's corporate headquarters. Ollie didn't believe in coincidence anymore, so he quietly reopened the data vault. He went back through everything, voice recordings, chat logs, server backups. And that's when he found something else. A brief audio clip, previously unnoticed. It had poor quality, background noise, and was part of a longer file labeled simply backup_cam2. In the middle of that clip, between office chatter and keyboard sounds, Zeeshan's voice emerged. Low, hurried, nervous. They don't want exposure. If it goes public, we all go down. This isn't just between me and him anymore. Ollie froze, replayed the sentence. Again and again. They don't want exposure. We all go down. Who was they? Suddenly, the story wasn't about a single betrayal anymore. It was about something bigger, more layered, possibly orchestrated. Zeeshan may have been the face of the crime. But was he ever the mastermind? Ollie remembered the strange call that started it all, the distorted voice that had warned him about Zeeshan, the anonymous source who had sent him the initial documents. Why would someone on the inside risk exposing the betrayal? Unless they weren't trying to help Ollie. They were trying to control the damage. Force Zeeshan's hand. Flush him out. What if Zeeshan's betrayal had only scratched the surface of a much larger scheme, a network of backdoor data sales, intellectual property laundering, and silent investors funding competitive sabotage in the city's booming tech scene? Adil Cameron was powerful, yes, but he wasn't powerful enough to erase a person. Not alone. Ollie began asking quiet questions, trusted only one retired journalist, dug through old court records, connected dots that no one else had ever looked at. What he found was chilling. 3 years ago, another tech founder had disappeared. Same city, similar circumstances, small scandal, quiet resolution, but no closure. That case, too, had been closed by the same officer who had later filed Zeeshan's report. The patterns were too clear to ignore. And then, suddenly, the retired journalist he was working with stopped responding. Gone. No warnings. No replies. Just gone. Ollie understood. This wasn't about recovering stolen code anymore. It was about exposing a system where people became pawns, where betrayal wasn't personal, it was professional, engineered. Ollie stared at the old case file the police had marked inactive. It was more than a folder of documents now. It was a door, and behind it was a shadowy operation far more dangerous than anything Zeeshan alone could have pulled off. One man's betrayal had led him here. But this time, Ollie knew he wasn't just seeking justice. He was stepping into a war. And the next story the world would hear wouldn't just shake a friendship. It would shatter an industry. Ollie had once believed that true friendship meant complete trust. No questions, no doubts, just loyalty, pure, blind, and unconditional. He had lived by that belief, shaped his life around it, built a business upon it. and it had cost him everything. But in the aftermath of betrayal, silence, and secrets, he learned something much deeper. Friendship, real friendship, is not blind. It sees clearly. It questions, not to accuse, but to protect. It sets boundaries, not to create distance, but to preserve respect. It holds people accountable, not out of suspicion, but out of love. Ollie came to understand that trust isn't about turning a blind eye. It's about looking directly at someone and choosing to believe in them after you've seen who they truly are. Because trust without awareness is not loyalty, it's naivety. And love without wisdom is not strength. It's a weakness waiting to be exploited. He no longer defined friendship by how long someone had been in his life or how many memories they shared. He began defining it by honesty, consistency, respect, by how someone acted when you were vulnerable, by what they did when you weren't looking. Zeeshan had taught him that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people closest to you, and that doesn't mean stop trusting. It means trust with your eyes open. It means forgive, but don't forget the lesson. Ollie rebuilt his life with that principle. Stronger, wiser, not colder, but clearer. He formed new friendships. Cautiously, slowly, he asked more questions. He listened more deeply. He no longer gave trust as a gift. He let it be earned over time through action. And in that process, he discovered something beautiful. That real friends don't fear accountability. They welcome it because they have nothing to hide. The pain Zeeshan left behind was real, but so was the clarity it gave. A clarity that allowed Ollie to define friendship not as blind devotion, but as honest connection built on truth, not illusion. And maybe, just maybe, that's what true friendship was meant to be all along. What about you? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you once called a friend? Have you trusted someone so deeply, only to watch them turn into a stranger? We want to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments below, because sometimes just speaking out loud helps others feel less alone. And if this story moved you, taught you something, or made you reflect even for a moment, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Crime Chronicles Confidential, and hit the bell icon. Every week, we bring you real stories of trust, betrayal, justice, and the hidden truths that shape people's lives. Your next favorite story is just one episode away.